Watch this for my top 10 recommendations of things to do in Washington, D.C. during the winter. Please ignore my holding my mic. My little clipper that clicks things onto my shirt broke, so we're just gonna have to do this until I get a new one. I talk way too quiet for no mic, so it is what it is. These are my top 10 recommendations of things to do in Washington, D.C. during the winter. I'm gonna start with 10 and end at number 1. Number 10, go to Chinatown. I love visiting different Chinatowns when I'm traveling around the States, especially in the bigger cities. So I knew I had to go visit Chinatown while I was in DC. However, it just wasn't what I was expecting. I don't know if it was because it was the winter or if my hopes were set too high because of New York's Chinatown, but didn't do it as much for me. But the food, as always, is going to be amazing. So definitely go to Chinatown to get you a nice lunch or dinner. Number 9, the U.S. Botanical Gardens. I also enjoy going to different botanical gardens when I'm traveling. Not only do they have different plants and greenery, but they also have models of the different monuments around DC to just stop through, and admission is free. Number 8, the National Air and Space Museum. This was pretty cool because it was cool to see the history of planes and all the cool NASA stuff. Things to note though, it is a pretty busier museum, I'd say, especially because, the kids love it. So just keep that in mind, but admission is also free here. Number 7, Capitol Hill Books. Capitol Hill Books is a must, especially if you're a book lover like me. It's a bookstore filled with like floor to ceiling different books that you can choose from. And that's been open since 1991. So it's definitely a piece of history and a staple when you're in the area. I also liked how it wasn't in the major touristy parts of the city. Like we had to take a train to get there, which was nice because it made me feel more like a local. There's a lot of shops and restaurants and cafes in that area, so you could spend a few hours in the area, definitely. Number 6, the Black Lives Matter Street. A must while you're in DC. Definitely a must. The reason it's number 6 for me is because it was literally just a street. Though the art on the street is cool, it's hard to get pictures or good shots when the cars are going on it. Like, it would be awesome if drones could be flown up there to get that bird's eye view, but you can't have drones in the area. So, definitely nice for you to get your pics, make a little stop, but you just won't stay there long as there isn't much to do. Number 5, the National Museum of Natural History. Definitely one of my favorite museums in the DC area, seeing all the fossils and all the evolutions and all the good stuff. Admission is also free, which is nice. In DC, most of, if not all of the museums are free. However, you just have to stand in those lines to get in, but they're honestly not that bad. Number 4, Ford's Theater. This was not initially planned before the trip. So initially, we just planned to go see the outside of it, like Ford's Theater, where Abraham Lincoln was shot. And then when we got there, we saw people lined up and like the pricing and all that, and then we decided to go. But I really enjoyed this museum. It was like the basement, they had a museum where you could learn more about Abraham Lincoln, his presidency, how he got shot and assassinated, and all the information that I thought I knew and learned about in school, but it was definitely a lot more than I learned. And then after you explore the basement area, you go up to the actual Ford's Theater where plays happen, and they have a little narration, story, something play presentation. There's a presentation about more that gives you more information about the story and how it happened, and then you actually get to like see Abraham Lincoln's little booth area and where it occurred. So that was pretty cool. Number 3, the Spy Museum. One thing about me is museums are cool, but if the museum can be interactive in a way, it has my attention fully. And this museum was like fully interactive. Not only are you learning about spies and the history and accessories and stuff, but you're also your own spy and you're solving missions as you go through each floor and level of the museum. The admission was not free, of course, but it was just 30 US dollars, so it wasn't too bad. Number 2, a day in Georgetown. If you go to Washington, D.C., Georgetown is not too far of a drive away. I don't remember how far it was. We took an Uber, but I'd say it was about 30-ish minutes. We went ice skating in Georgetown, which was nice. I always love going ice skating. However, I will say this rink was one of the more challenging rinks because the ice wasn't as frozen. It was a little sloshy. So Georgetown Waterfront Park is also a must. We went to the escape room Georgetown, which was fun. I always love a good escape game, and we actually escaped this one. That was a rewarding feeling. There's also so many cute shops and restaurants to check out in the Georgetown area. So I would definitely recommend spending half a day over there. You can do so much. And there's a lot of cute picture spots like this. One of my favorite pictures. Number 1, the number 1 must thing to do in Washington, D.C. is go to the memorials and see all the sites, because why else, honestly? Like, who goes to Washington, D.C. and doesn't look at all those things? Unless you've been there multiple times, it's definitely a must on your first time. Some of the memorials and sites that we went to was the White House, the Washington Monument, the World War II Memorial, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, and then we also went to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, which I guess is a museum, but I still included it in the sites thing. On the way to the Lincoln Memorial is the big reflecting pool. And because when we went, it was December, it was frozen. I remember we were walking towards the Lincoln Memorial and I was like, are those people on the water? And there's literally so many people, if not 100 people, like fake ice skating on the reflecting pool because it was frozen. And so, of course, we tried. So it was very cool. Ended up being one of my highlights. Like, we're literally walking on a pool, big body of water that is frozen in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Even though I went to DC in December, there was still a lot to do, and it definitely exceeded my expectations. I really enjoyed my time on the trip. The weather wasn't too cold, but it was nice to have all those free museums and sites and things to do indoors when it gets a little bit too brisk. And then, as always, the food is very nice. See you next week.